to Ask the Experts. I'm Jill Schlesinger, editor-at-large of CBSMoneyWatch.com, and I'm joined by my cohort,
Jack Otter, executive editor of CBSMoneyWatch.com.
I like when you say executive editor because I always forget that.
That's why I do it, to help you out.
I think we need a different title. It's so confusing. There's a managing, there's an executive. Sometimes I forget which one's more important, but then I just remember Jack. Exactly. Jack's the most important. Jack, this is a very exciting day today.
Sure is.
Do you know why? Because I've had an internet love affair with our guest.
Wow. I'm glad it's finally...
Well, I thought I'd come clean.
Sure.
It's time to come out of the closet with this. So I am so delighted to invite and to have in our studio Bryce Covert. Bryce, I totally made you blush. Holy crap.
I know. Well, you're unveiling our internet love.
I know. It's awesome. So let me give you guys a background. Bryce works with New Deal 2.0 blog. And so here's what happened. I happened to subscribe to New Deal 2.0, and I started reading these columns. And Jack, it's so funny, because you don't know the person, right? And then I started following her on Twitter, and then I started reading some of the stuff she's writing, and I'm like, I think this girl is so... All right, let me just be first clear that I didn't know she was a girl first. I did not.
You're not alone.
Well, it's sort of like that androgynous first name. I'm all over it.
It's a boy's name. It's not even androgynous.
Yeah,
What's up with your parents?
I've asked for the story, and they give me vague answers, but I'm named after Bryce Canyon, and my great-grandmother was Betty, so there's like a B.
A B and a B?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Bryce Canyon, are we supposed to understand that there's some conception in a...
I'm hoping not.
All right. We don't need to go into that detail.
Yeah.
I understand. All right. Now here...
I was born in Colorado, so...
That's why she's awfully nice also. She's got that kind of Rocky Mountain High thing going. It's awesome. All right. So here's why Bryce is here. She writes a weekly column on credit cards and debt called The Swipe. And first of all, I loved the title of it. And you were taking this stance really that was pretty tough on the credit card companies. And you have a credit card, you yourself, you are not into this whole American addiction with credit cards.
No, in fact, I have never owned a credit card.
How is this possible?
You think that it can't be done? Actually, it's come in handy for research purposes. It's funny. We were talking about, we both went to Brown. When I arrived at college, they just have tables lined up for students to sign up for these cards. And they asked, do you want one? And I thought, I'm already going to be heavily in debt because of college. Do I really want to be taking more money that's not mine and then being in the hands of these people who are lending it to me? So I said, you know what, forget it. And I've just stuck with it. And
But how do you do this living day to day? Come on now. Jack and I are very consumptive. Okay, let's be honest, right? I will speak for myself, but I like the convenience of a credit card. I don't abuse it. I never carry a balance. But it is easier. What do you carry, a wad of cash? What's up with you?
Actually, living in New York, you have to carry a lot of cash. But I'm not a huge fan of cash. I use my debit card. And it's got that little Visa picture on it. And it actually functions in all ways like a credit card, except that I don't owe anyone anything. The money is just what I've got in my checking account.
And Jack, how are you feeling about that?
Well, I do the same as you. I have a credit card, don't carry a balance. For certain things like hotels, paying for gas, flat screen TV on the internet, which we buy all the time, right? I think there are advantages to using a credit card. In the hotel and gas situation, they'll put a block on your balance for the amount that they think you're going to owe. So if you don't actually go to the gym and eat lots of, room service meals, they'll block more money than you're actually going to spend there. And then there's protections that come with purchasing something with a credit card, because really you're buying it now, but you're not paying for it for a month. So you've got some time to fight it. Whereas once the money's out of your account with a debit card, it's gone. You can fight and maybe get it back, but...
Right, and those are all really good points. There's other complications that come up. The biggest one that I face is my credit score, because no matter, how good I am about paying my bills and whatever else I owe, I'll never have as good a credit score as someone who has cards that they pay off and, don't carry a balance. And there's kind of no way around that. It just is what it is. And why I got into this, writing about this, it started with a post asking, well, why is it that there are so many things that are sort of pushing you towards credit cards when they can be handled well, but a lot of people find themselves prey to practices that keep them mired in debt. So, why are we setting this system up that's so heavily based on it? But you're right that if you're very careful about it, credit cards can be a plus. I worry about those who aren't able to be as careful and pay off their balances.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And so we're going to get to a lot of those people because we have a ton of questions. But just so we understand where we are in the process, we had the Card Act that was passed, and all the final pieces of this are now in place. And from your vantage point, what do you think are the best parts of the Card Act, and what did they goof up on?
Well, so the Card Act is really great. Overall, huge win for consumers. One of my favorite things is on interest rates. I think that's probably the biggest win. They being credit card companies, can't jack up the rate in the first year of an account. After that, they have to give you 45 days warning if they're going to. And there are also some restrictions on, the reasons that they can use to jack up your rate. So that's a little bit tighter.
And my favorite part of that is that they can't increase the rate on purchases you've already made.
Right.
Because that to me is practically violating a contract. I mean, you did something under one set of agreements. To change that is tough.
Yeah, and in fact, they've also tamped down on rate hikes to do with late payments. Often it'll kick in another rate that you didn't really expect was coming. So a lot of those surprises are going to be taken out. Also, late payments, there were some wins. You now have 21 days to pay, which before it was kind of whatever they wanted to say.
We'll let you know. We'll let you know what that rate is.
We'll let you know tomorrow that it's due tomorrow. And they also now have to pay the excess, the extra money from your payment towards the highest rate account, which means that you're not going to that's what you would expect, that you pay money, it's going to pay down the one that's making them the most interest. The catch there is that they can still just take your minimum payment and put it wherever they want, but excess payments now go where you think they're going to go.
When I come back in my next life, here's what I'm going to come back as. Number one, I'm going to come back as the house in a casino. And number two, I'm going to come back as a credit card company up through 2010.
I was going to say, do it, maybe
right,
in the 80s.
Retroactively. I mean, come on. Well, let me just get to start to some of these questions, because I think this is a great one. Jamal says, how is it legal for credit card companies to send offers with sign-up fees for $200 and APR and rates above 30%? Isn't this usury? What is up with that? Why can they do that?
Well, because we relaxed our usury laws, basically. There were some decisions in the late 70s, early 80s that allowed companies to kind of park their home in whatever state had really lax laws and then just take those laws to wherever else they had their operations. And a lot of things like that started to happen. And yeah, that's totally legal. I mean, the Card Act isn't going to get rid of, I saw one story, one woman had a 79.9% APR, which is just insane.
Did Kathy write about that? I think Kathy Christoph may have written about
that
also. Isn't that crazy?
It's just crazy. But that's legal as long as you know it's happening and they give you notice if they're going to bump up to that. Totally kosher.
Now, and in just a little Providence moment, it is as if you're getting charged from someone on Federal Hill.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's a little mob reference.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm
gotcha.
going to give you. Yeah.
Big mob.
Exactly. So, Jack, most people do need a credit card. Most people cannot be as disciplined as Bryce. And what do they need to really be thinking about going forward here?
Well, you got to think about how you're going to use it. One obvious crucial issue is, are you going to carry a balance? We always tell people not to. That doesn't mean they won't. So think about it honestly. I mean, I certainly recommend, if you think you can't control yourself, then follow Bryce's path and only use a debit card. If that doesn't work, just make sure you get a card with the lowest possible interest rate. None of this 30% stuff we've been talking about. And yeah, I think it comes down to budgeting, and we've talked about budgeting before, but wants versus needs. If you have to pay a bill and there's no getting around it, okay, essentially borrowing money from the credit card company is not the best path, but if it's the only path, fine. But don't go get the iPhone 5 next month and put it on your credit card only to pay it off over 2 years. I got this offer from when I put my kids in private school in kindergarten, this offer for borrowing the money. And I thought, and I'm going to pay this off when?
Right.
When they get out of college?
Right.
So I think people really need to think about this purchase. If you don't know when you're going to be able to pay it off, then don't make it because you cannot afford it.
Right.
And credit cards enable this these very bad habits.
And here's a question from Bob. It says, I'm once again getting 0% offers for 12 months to transfer balances to other cards. It used to be credit card companies could basically change the rate at any time they wanted for any reason they wanted. Has the new law changes? So you say yes, that in the first year, but the pitfall would be in the second year, right?
Right. So there's a lot. It looks like there's a lot of companies offering these 0%, and you can transfer the balance, and that's great. Just watch out for what happens after that year. And even if they're going to give you 45 days notice, I don't always read all my mail. Just
You don't?
I can be bad about it. I'm better with email.
Right.
Just know what you're getting into, and if you're not going to want to be paying a 30% APR, then pay it off and get rid of it before that hits, because you're going to get hit with it eventually.
Yeah,
and set it up automatically.
Oh, this is Jack's favorite thing.
Yeah.
Please do your favorite little tip. It's the Otter tip.
I'm sometimes not the most organized guy in the world. I got a lot going on with children and the whole thing, and I sometimes will be late on a bill, a cable bill or something, just because the darn thing slips through the cracks. So whenever possible, I try to automate it. So in the case of one of these 0% balance transfers, just set it up so you pay off a given amount every month. And you know what? Build yourself a little moat. So maybe it pays it off a month early. And then there's just no issues.
And for those people, one of the things that we know is that people are using these cards and they have old balances that are floating around. So there is a couple of questions that we got. Here's one from Vandy. What's the best no-fee money-back credit card available for someone with good credit? And then another one here from John. Is it smart to use balance transfer offers where you transfer credit card balances from one to another? Should you use balance transfer offers on any other types of debt? So what I'm going to do is the shameless plug for this fabulous article we have, which is the best credit cards for 2011, because we actually did take a look at all these different cards. And Roland, pop this up if you wouldn't mind on the old screen. And, we do have the best low rate card. We also have the best balance transfer card, which is the Discover More card. Now, there's something to be said about this, correct, Jack?
Yeah, this was a funny story. It came together pretty smoothly, and then we hit all these hitches. This particular card, this offer is available on certain websites. I'm not talking Discover's websites, just like a random bank website. This offer would be available. And then on somebody else offering the same card under different terms. And corporate headquarters in Chicago actually wasn't able to tell us what was current or not. And they said, well, they would look it up online and say, yeah, that's being offered, so I guess that's good. First Tennessee, the top one there, said that the card was available anywhere in the country. And then a couple of our readers said, well, no, it's not. And then I called and they said, well, it's available in any state that touches Tennessee, that's contiguous. And then the head of corporate VP said, no, the head of corporate communications said, so it's crazy. So try our links, make the phone calls. You might not get the deal just because they change all the time. But if you scroll to the bottom, we've got the answer to that question of what the best low fee.
It's the last one, I remember. Here it is. There's a money management one. Here it is, the best overall card.
Yeah, so these are really good. You get cash back, and there's no fee. There's also one, if you have a Fidelity account, that actually was the very best cash back, but it's only good if you have a Fidelity account.
Right. And look, the same thing. There are different categories because if you are the kind of person who uses airline miles, fantastic. But, a lot of those mileage programs kind of stink because, you think you're getting something really good and you might be better off with a cashback card. So just, you have to kind of know how you use credit also.
But we do eat our own cooking here at MoneyWatch. I got the Venture card that you just scrolled past.
Yeah.
I actually got that card because I have all these Delta Sky miles sitting around that I can never use because they have one seat next to the lavatory next year,
Right.
So this one is matching my Delta Sky miles.
Really?
100,000 miles, yeah.
Here's the thing. I hate to say this. I am lazy. I have the exact same 2 credit cards I've always had since I graduated from college. Kind of not interested in changing anything. What can I say?
It's kind of my no-hassle approach. So
it's the no-hassle approach.
That,
And if you travel a lot, I kind of dig that whole idea about, I know this is going to sound kind of snobby, but I love the Platinum card because it gives you automatic upgrades wherever you go. Psych! Love that. I'm a girl who likes a nice hotel. Okay, here we go. Let's do this. Okay, and so those are the questions about the cards, but here's something interesting. Here's from Rhonda. My husband has a card and I have one in my name. My husband's card is the only one we've ever used, but now I'm getting promotions for 18 months, 0% transfer. Should I transfer the balance from his higher rate card to mine to get it paid? Does that have a bad effect on my credit? Won't the card companies offer the same promotion? Why won't the card companies offer the same promotion to him, Jack?
Love that question.
Yes.
First, I want to find out this is kind of a help me Rhonda situation.
Oh, very nice. Yeah. Very good. I love it.
Well, the reason that they're not offering that to him is because they've already got him and he's paying them interest, and that's what they want. And the reason they're offering you this deal is because they hope that sooner or later you're going to end up paying them interest too. So let's just understand that's the credit card company's motivation. It's not because they enjoy giving people interest-free loans. They're trying to hook you in. That said, I'd go ahead and do this. As always, we're going to preach discipline. Put it on that zero balance and then get it paid off before 18 months. But, if you can play the game right and not fall into the traps they're setting for you, it's a great deal.
Right. And just in general, as you look at that, are you familiar with any of the rules about how spouses are treated under like the credit reporting agencies? And we had a guy on here who said, you should keep your credit separate, because if your spouse is kind of not exactly a premium guy in terms of credit score, then what can happen is, it can affect you. And it's better to actually preserve one good credit rather than mess up both of yours. So do you have an opinion on that?
I would agree. I had a friend who was trying to look for an apartment with her boyfriend, and they kept getting turned away because he had screwed up his student loans like 10 years ago. And that stuff follows you around for so long. Not to mention that a lot of credit scores have a lot of mistakes on them. Like 79% in one study found that there was a lot of mistakes.
Wow.
So
wow,
they're kind of a messy things. It's good to figure out what yours is and really keep on it. So yeah, I would say that. I would also point out, going back to the Card Act, one of the sort of pitfalls that they've found is that the Federal Reserve made this new rule that they need to take into account people's income, which is a good thing. Before they're loaning the money, but they're only going to take into account an individual's income, not a household's, which is going to be really problematic for stay-at-home moms and people who maybe rely on their spouse's income. Talking about, spouses trying to have their own credit scores. We're hoping that that's going to be changed, because it's really important for a stay-at-home mom to have her own credit score, to be able to have things in her name. That marriage may not last, and then she'll be stuck without a history of her own.
A marriage might not last.
I know, it's shocking.
It's shocking. I got a couple of other questions here that are really interesting here because we just came in and I thought this was good. Does transferring balances around to get the best rate affect your credit rating? Now, in other words, I've got one card, I do a transfer balance. Now, ostensibly, when that happens, I'm opening up a new card and that will affect my credit rating, right? I think that is right.
That's how I would do it, yeah.
And so
right.
that is going to affect. So doing that so yes, transferring balances around can affect your credit rating because you're opening up new credit. And even if you're shutting down the old credit, there is a net effect on your credit rating, depending on who's searching at what point in the cycle, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But it all, you got to weigh it one against the other. I mean, if you stand to save thousands of dollars in interest payments at the risk of a dent in your credit score, and you don't plan to buy a house or something, or borrow money for a car in the near future, go ahead and do it. Save that money.
And if you're going to go out, this is from Amato, who says, I'm going to refinance. I want to improve my my credit to debt ratio before the process begins. And so the question is, does opening a new credit card improve the credit to debt ratio? So yeah, because you'll have more available credit. And Jack, this is your theory about like before the time to actually address anything around your credit is right before you do something massive with a house purchase or a refi, and like don't do anything that's going to screw that up, right?
Right. Yeah. So just to be clear, so you don't actually take these steps right before somebody's going to run your credit because it can ding you.
And look, that's the one thing I was going to ask you. You don't have a credit score. Well, what happens if you want to buy a house?
That is the downfall. The downfall to my plan. I have a pretty okay credit score. I paid off my student loans. I pay my bills on time. So it's not like I have no history for anybody to look at. But Yeah, my credit history is going to look different than someone who has had credit cards, and it might be more difficult. But on the flip side, I'm going to look a lot better compared to someone who gets a bunch of credit cards and then they can't pay off their balances and they're ruining their score.
But you wouldn't do that.
I would never do that.
What about just getting a credit card and cut it up? Cut it up.
Just do it.
And then you'll have that
Everyone's
credit
doing
available.
I've thought about it a lot, and as I get closer to buying a house, if I ever buy a house, that may be something I do. But at this point, because it's not something I need, and I'm not there yet, I'm still renting because I live in New York. It just is something I'm still pretty wary
Let's be
about.
honest. You're using this as like a total gimmick for your writing, which is
totally
awesome.
is, yeah.
I love that. I think that's awesome. I think you use it what you can, and then you know what? Make sure you start dating someone with really good credit before you buy.
I'll just make him take out all the credit cards and just ruin his score.
That's right. Here's from Tanya. This is sort of a general statement. I hope we can move from dependency on credit cards and the banks being in charge of our lives to being free from such credit card debt and moving to where the banks do not control our lives. Do you think that's really going to happen? I mean, we have a society that is addicted to this process of either debit or credit cards. And, again, for convenience purposes, do you think it's going to change?
Well, not to get too sort of philosophical
Why
and
not?
political on you, but our whole society is really moving towards caring about what the banks are doing and less about what's going on for the working class. The financial crash was all because these people went and made these bad bets on Wall Street, and then now we're talking about collective bargaining rights for workers. It's just that, but we want to make sure that the people on Wall Street are still making really good profits. So are we going to move to a society where we're not relying on banks? I doubt it. But I do think, so the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was started by the financial reform bill that was signed last year. Probably my favorite part of that whole bill, because its sole purpose is to create a marketplace for consumers where the playing field is much more even, where you're getting the right information, where these practices of jacking up your rates and surprising you aren't going to happen anymore. And so if we put those cops on the beat, I think that we stand a better chance against the banks.
Jack, are you going to let this leftist ideologue get away with this? I want to do like the Octobox of CNBC and have everyone up here like, go at it. What are you going to say to this?
Let's call Rick Santelli.
Let's
get him streaming on
foaming
Skype,
at the mouth.
Well, I'm going to kind of side with you and look at it from a different angle, which is, in the 90s, I remember when I was working at Smart Money Magazine, and we kept on watching as the financial industry share of the S&P 500 kept on growing and growing and growing. So the banking industry has grown relative to the rest of the economy at a much faster rate. And everyone said, well, that's got to shrink in the natural course of things. But these are a tenacious bunch, and when it shrinks, it means they make less money. And frankly, it's a lot easier to produce profits when, I'll get slaughtered for this, I know, but when you're just moving around paper and money and making trades and taking a nickel here and a nickel there, that's easier than building trucks and selling them to China, right? So I think that it's a real structural issue. And of course, anytime you try to do these regulations, you're told that the government is interfering in allowing these bankers to innovate. And I'm never quite sure how that innovation helps.
Yeah, I used to, look, I love the industry. I love this idea of capital formation. I think it's amazing. But something went wildly wrong, clearly, right? And we saw that everyone got out of the business of like, let me provide capital and liquidity to these companies and bring them to the public markets into, like, as you said, just making pennies on trades. So what's hard is I think the public is left with this feeling that we're powerless. And so I know that you heart Elizabeth Warren.
Yes.
You are
perhaps more than you, I have to say.
I'm sure that
she's
you
my idol.
I'm sure you do. But it doesn't look like she's going to be the one who can get through and run the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And I just wonder, is that going to lose steam? I don't know. It's like you feel like the crisis, everybody was attuned to this. We were on it. And now it was already like, it's now history. It's in our past. it's the impact of it is diminished as the more time goes by. So I'm a little concerned that we kind of just go back to where we were.
I think we probably will, and it'll be different problems that the banks are creating, but they'll still find them. I mean, you've got smart people working full time to figure out how to pull money out of our wallets, and the individual just isn't capable of defending himself. It'd be nice if we could find some structural changes, because I do agree with the conservative point of view in that just piling on more and more and more regulations can be counterproductive. Somebody said that there are over 200 agencies responsible for AIG. And that's probably one reason that AIG got away with it, because there was probably turf wars over who would regulate them. So I love the Jack Bogle idea, which doesn't really address credit. It doesn't address credit cards at all, but he wants to initiate a small tax on every single trade on Wall Street. It would be a share of a penny. So it wouldn't affect any of us. If you want to buy some IBM and hold on to it, no difference. If you're a high frequency trader, it'd kill you. And to me, those kind of moves that are carefully targeted and don't require constant government interference. Just here's the playing field. I hope that we could figure out how to do that with credit cards and the rest of the banking industry.
Well, and look, I'm not here to bash banks. I do think that they serve a really important purpose, particularly putting liquidity into the market and lending. But as you pointed out, their share of our economy is so outrageous. And we have to ask, what are they giving back? What's the real value of their work? And there is some. But then there's just the moving the paper around, and
which
why
has
is
friction,
that?
and it's all pennies that come off every time that piece of paper is moved, and it comes out of our pockets one way or the other.
And,
goes into theirs.
And speaking about some of those paper pushing moments, so here's one from Maggie in San Diego, who says her credit union recently notified me with almost no notice that the Visa credit and debit card holders will be replaced by MasterCards, and I'm waiting to find out if I activate the new MasterCard credit cards, would it affect my credit score? In that I've added a new line of credit. Does it change my credit score because I've just closed, quote unquote, the previous Visa account? And is it good for the credit union and a bad thing for me? I don't know if it is such a good thing for the credit union. I mean, I don't know. Like it doesn't seem to me it's a huge win one way or the other, the Visa versus MasterCard, is it?
No, because it's so competitive. I think they have to match each other. That's interesting. I wonder what happened there. Sounds like a good salesman and not quite as good a salesman.
Yeah, exactly.
Somehow MasterCard won that battle.
And I don't know if, I remember this happened to me a long time ago where I had a similar thing with a Visa and a MasterCard, and it was because I had an old, like a Visa American Advantage card, and American just did a whole new deal with MasterCard. Yep. And I don't think it actually, my account did change, but it didn't, it seemed like the same account. And when you go back, there's like a link to my old account. So I don't know if that actually changes your credit score, because I don't know if you're officially shutting one card down and opening a new one.
Yeah, I would want more details on that. I mean, if you're really just sort of, it sounds more like they're switching than like opening a new account, in which case it's not going to matter as much, but you got to read that fine print.
Michael wants to know the best way to get a credit card after bankruptcy without a financial institution taking advantage of the situation with heavy fees. So a prepaid card will do it for you. They'll get you with heavy fees, though.
Yeah.
You're screwed. I mean, let's be honest. Let's be honest. Like, that is the downside. I mean, bankruptcy can be awesome. It is a fresh start. And it is actually one part. A friend of mine who's a bankruptcy attorney sort of like gave me the whole background of bankruptcy. And I really think there is something pretty awesome that doesn't exist in many other countries, where you can wipe the slate clean after you've really kind of messed up for one reason or another. Okay, so some of it is like you did yourself in, some of it circumstances did you in. You get a clean slate. But part of that clean slate is you got to start over, and you do have to pay more, and your credit is wrecked for 7 years. And I know it gets progressively better, but there's not much to do about that.
No, I mean, you're going to have to live with fees one way or the other. Prepaid debit cards can be helpful, but they come with crazy fees. They're also not really regulated the same way. So, you're getting into a whole other world there. And the cards that are being offered to people with less than perfect scores are the ones that have like the 59.9% APR, $135 in fees a year. So, if you're not carrying a balance, you can probably avoid some of that, but you're going to have to be super careful.
Right. And you really have had to have found religion in that.
Yeah, one tactic would be to look for the lowest fee, highest interest charge, and just make darn sure you don't carry a balance.
Absolutely. Here's Alicia in New York City. Okay, I'm told to keep a balance, but pay it all off every month. What's the point? If I can pay it off all month, if I can pay it all off, why do I need a credit card? Shouldn't I just use a debit card? Please, Jill and Bryce, give us the real scoop. What are the secrets the credit card companies don't want us to know? So the one secret is that there's no reason you should ever carry a balance if you can pay it off, because that is the moment where the credit card the company is making a crap load of money. Mm-hmm. And the answer to the debit, I will turn over to Bryce, who says...
Sure. Well, you don't need to have a credit card. I'm living proof. But as we've talked about, there are some places where I'm going to be disadvantaged. I mean, there's the things like hotels, renting a car can be a little more complicated. And then there's your credit score, which is not going to be as healthy. But you can do it. And if you can pay off your balance, you're probably the best candidate for having a card. I mean, as much as I'd love to have more converts to my cause, she's probably the one that should be getting the card. The secret they don't want you to know, however, is the interest rate hike at the back of your agreement, which has bloated up to 30 pages from a page and a half in the 1980s. So there are secrets that they're going to stick in there.
Bryce, did you see did you listen to the podcast from Planet Money where they tried to have a fifth grader read a credit card agreement to understand? It was awesome. Anyway, but what's so great about it is none of us is going to read a 30-page credit card agreement, just like none of us is going to read a 85-page prospectus that's written on onion paper that you're just not going to get through it. So I do think that one of the things that would be so awesome if the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau could do is to somehow standardize what that should say, or at least say, you want to do 30 pages to protect your butts, companies, that's fine. But there has to be a one-page document where the following bullet points are covered. Because I know that, like, friends of mine will say to me, well, what are these people, idiots? They thought people were just going to give them money without any strings attached. And I think that, yeah, okay, there are a bunch of people who may have been idiots, but like then at least if you have one page where it's clear, you have no excuse to be an idiot.
Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, that reminds me, on the balance transfers, people see 0% and they think it's free, but a lot of these actually charge you 3%.
Right.
So, that could be $300, right? So you do have to be careful of that. Some of them are 0% and no fee. So that's a real good deal.
Yeah.
but be careful.
I was just going to say, there's no replacement for personal responsibility. I mean, you're going to be responsible one way or the other, no matter what kind of regulations are in place for whatever you agree to and to paying that. But if you don't know what you're getting into, then it's not an even playing field.
Right.
And I think that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has already started doing some of what you want, Jill, which is to put those fees and interest rates right on the front page, put it in language that you can understand. And then they've also been asked to talk about, well, if you don't do this or you do that, what's the consequence? So if you don't pay above your minimum balance, what's going to happen? How long will it take to pay it back? And already, I think there was a study that 23% of people are paying over their minimum balance more than they would have been before these regulations. So it's happening. It's working.
I mean, it does. Listen, we're not as dumb as we look, okay? We know. Let me get to a few more questions before we finish up here. This is a very long one, but let me try to get this. This is from CR in Oakland, California, who says, in November 2009, I received notification from Wells Fargo that it was increasing the APR on my Visa credit card to 22.85% from 11.9% at the end of that month, giving me the opportunity of opting out of this increase and paying off my balance over a period of time at the existing rate. Okay, so okay, that sounds good. I'll be able to lock in 11.9 versus 22.3. However, choosing the opt-out after choosing to opt out and canceling the card, it was made clear to me by Wells Fargo that the new rate of 22.85 would now apply immediately to any balance of purchases made over the previous years at 11.9. Huh?
Yeah.
That totally seems like bait and switch. Mm-hmm. Despite the claim that I had the rate as an introductory rate, I'd been charged 11.9 over the previous 3 years. Anyway, the whole thing basically sounds horrifying. Although I've been paying the balance off at the high rate and the card is canceled, I'm wondering if there has been any new development in the handling of predatory lending practices, such as this at Wells Fargo. Although Wells Fargo, I'm sure if we were going to be sponsoring Ask the Experts, you would want to correct this yourselves. Naturally, this amount is going to take a year. This debt's going to take a long time, and it's going to be a negative on the credit report, right? But what recourse do you have on something that happened 3 years ago, to which you agreed and you may not have read all the fine print? What do you think that we ought to do with this? Go.
Well, first of all, contact the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They have a place to contact them. They're not entirely up and running. They don't have a permanent chief, so they might not be able to get to you yet. But definitely let them know. Let your representatives know. There was a woman, I think it was in 2009, who started the Debtors Revolt.
I love that.
She had a similar thing happen to her where all of a sudden, for no good reason, she'd been a good paying customer, they're just jacking up her rate. And she said to them, I'm not going to pay. And you're not getting, you were getting all my payments on time. You're not going to get anything from me anymore. And she did this whole YouTube campaign and brought a lot of press attention and was able to get them to push it back down. So granted, that's a very extreme case. I don't know if you really want or have the time
right.
to run a YouTube campaign. But if you're loud enough, I think that you can, even if you just call them and say, hey, look, why are you doing this to me? Can we make a deal? It's worth seeing if you can work with them.
And Jack, what about this idea of like sort of trying to deal with a credit card company? Is that just like banging your head against the wall, or is it the squeaky wheel? I mean, really, do you think it's worth it for people to really try?
Well, the first question you have to ask is, do they have any leverage? And if you're still a customer, you have a little bit of leverage. I think this guy's in a bad position because he's no longer a customer. There's zero reason for them to play ball. And now, of course, the law has changed, so they can't actually jack up the rate on previous purchases, like we talked about. Other than being a squeaky wheel and making a lot of noise and writing the right people, I don't think he has much. But I think the lesson for other viewers is, if you're in this situation where you want to cut ties, make sure that you don't actually sever the ties till after you've gotten everything you want. And just keep that card, cut it up, and pay it off at the low rate.
That's right. While you have leverage, it's like when you owe an institution money, whether it's a bank or a mortgage company or a credit card company, you do have leverage. You have their money.
Right.
And, I had an email exchange with somebody who was telling me, I lost my job. I'm a 99er. I've run out of my benefits. I have a $25,000 balance on my credit card, and I don't know what to do. Should I just declare bankruptcy? I'm like, wait a second. You got them where you want them, actually. You could declare bankruptcy, but you might be better off, killing yourself to get some horrible job that you think is beneath you, but just get the job, okay? I don't care. Get a job, and then go to the credit card company and say, I could walk away from this, or we can cut a deal. And, it was interesting because she wrote me back and she goes, they took my call. So I'm waiting to hear about that. I got a couple last questions here before we let Miss Bryce go. Miss Bryce, it's like Fanny Bryce. It's sort of sweet. Okay. First, I'm starting my own business. At first, it's just going to be me working from home, but it's going to grow to have several employees. Let me just say, as someone who owned her own business, go easy on the employees. It's really not worth it. Do I need to get a separate credit card for my business right away, or can I run the expenses through my personal credit card? Jack?
Well, you certainly can run your expenses. Many a great business has started by people putting money on their credit card. Now, you know me, no hassle guy. I would absolutely get a new credit card, only use that for business expense, absolutely nothing else, so that tax time for accounting purposes, you know exactly what you spent on your business expenses. That goes on a separate, was it 2061?
Yeah.
On your tax form. So that's the way I'd do it, just for ease. But from a legal standpoint, a financial standpoint, it makes no difference. Yeah.
And, it's just like you said, it's cleaner.
Yeah.
And that's all. All right, last question.
And if you get audited, boy, it'll make your life easier.
It sure will. How do you explain that card and that charge? Okay. Here's one from Don, who says, okay, I'll be the first to say my credit is poor. I love a man who knows himself. But in the last 4 years, I've paid off every bill I owed due to medical illness. Okay. And I have retired from the U.S. Army. I now have had a job with a 6-figure income. Not bad. And when I go and ask for a credit card, they say I can't have one. Not because I have bad credit, but because I have no credit. How do you win? Bryce, this is a little bit of like that circular reasoning, huh?
It is. I mean, the other secret is that you might be too good for them. I mean, you can get turned away, strangely enough, if you look like you're too good a customer, because they're not going to make any money off of you. So, is it because you don't have credit, or is it just because you're making some nice money there? I don't know.
Yeah. And Jack, as we part ways today, your last little tip for people who are kind of managing their credit is?
Rack up the miles.
There it is. Get those darn miles. My little bit of last advice is this, that none of us is as pristine as Miss Bryce. Let's be honest. So if you're going to have credit, you have to use it responsibly. Try to limit to like two cards, maybe a third. Don't do that. I know you're at Ann Taylor, and they say if you open up a credit card account right now, you will get a 15% discount. Don't do it. Do not just say no to department store cards. I think that is the most evil part of the whole process. So don't do that. If you have more questions about the credit card industry, even if you think it's like wacky and crazy, just send it to us. Ask the experts at MoneyWatch.com. And go check out Bryce Covert's New Deal 2.0 blog called The Swipe. Roland, could you put that up on the screen for me? I have complained that I don't like Bryce's photo. I find it is not, I mean, anyone who has watched this now can see that this does not do you justice. We want a new photo.
All right. That's what I'm going to do, just for you.
Thank you very much. And what's kind of cool is Bryce is taking a whole different view of this, and one that is really consumer friendly. And I think that you'll really like it, and you can check out the rest of New Deal 2.0 from the Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt Institute. Now, sadly, I have a connection to Theodore Roosevelt, but not to Franklin. But let me just say this. My grandfather's name, Theodore Roosevelt Schlesinger. Okay, it was just named after him. That was my only connection. So, Bryce, would you come back if we did like more fun credit excitement?
Definitely, I'd love to be back.
Super, Jack.
Ask the Experts 2.0.
That I like that.
We
Jack,
can merge.
Would you come back?
Yes, and we should tell people I was kidding about the rank up the miles thing.
Yeah,
they might not get that sense of humor.
That whole like sarcastic New York smarminess that we, just really just comes off the tip of our tongues.
Right.
I did this yesterday, by the way. I was tweeting about this, and I'd seen an article. I don't think you would call it an article when it's on Jezebel. What would that be called? A snippet about how women are starting to drink bourbon. So I tweeted and forgetting that, by the way, I'm in the CBS News Twitter feed. Maybe it's time for me to trade scotch for bourbon. And then
I probably chimed in.
I don't know, but it was just sort of sad that I realized someone was actually took me very seriously and linked up with me like to a very serious bourbon site. So I said, okay, I've taken this too far. And we may have taken this too far.
It's all right, but you can drink either scotch or bourbon if you want.
But not put it on a credit card, according to Bryce Covert. Just use your debit. Bryce Covert can be found on New Deal 2.0. Check it out. And Jack Otter can be found all the time on MoneyWatch.com. He is
Indeed.
the, get this, executive editor.
That's me.
I finally got it right.
Thanks.
I'm Jill Schlesinger, and I'm the editor-at-large of MoneyWatch.com. Tune in next week. Wednesdays is our new day. Wednesdays at 2 p.m. It is my fault. I've made the whole staff change schedules as a result. Jack, will you forgive me for that?
Well, for a moment, I thought today was Thursday. It got me all confused, but now I'm down
You're
with
okay?
it. Yep.
You're okay with Wednesdays?
Yep.
I promise you some bourbon in exchange.
Okay, thanks.
Bryce, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great having you, and we'll have you again for sure.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you all so much for watching with all of your fantastic questions. If you've got any financial questions, always feel free to go to MoneyWatch.com. We've got a button on the right-hand side of the top of the site. Just pop on it, and we'll just answer your question. You'll either get here to ask the experts, you can get onto the Jill on Money radio show, or we'll just, respond to a blog or something. But engage, and we will give you that information. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week.